What's up, everybody? I'm Adam. You're watching the Model Aviator channel. You know, anytime a new model is announced, it creates a lot of buzz. We all get excited about it. I think this one is going to be another level. This was announced this morning. This is the brand new E-Flite twin 64mm Airbus A320neo. Now, when I hear twin 64mm, the first place my mind goes is it must be small. Well, as you can see, this is not a small model. When E-Flite started developing this airplane, they had a few goals in mind. They wanted a full-featured, scale, decent-sized airliner that would fly exceptionally well, but they wanted to make it more convenient and easier to deal with on a day-to-day basis than any other large-scale airliner that had been made before it. Let's see if they hit the marks. The assembly is relatively simple. The manual does a great job of taking you through those steps, and there's no glue required. The part count is relatively low, especially considering the size of this one. We started by putting the two fuselage halves together. The wing tube is conveniently stored in the rear portion of the fuselage. You want to pull that out and get that out of your way, and you want to remove the hatch from the front portion of the fuse. You're going to use 3 carbon rods, 2 long ones for the top, a shorter one for the bottom. You want to put those in the rear portion of the fuse and then mat that to the front portion of the fuse. When you do this, it makes electronic connections automatically for rudder, elevator, and lights on the rear portion of the fuse. There are 3 thumb screws that you can also utilize a 2.5mm driver to snug down. You're going to put one at the top on either side, going front to back, and one on the bottom going back to front. And worth noting, there's plenty of room in that fuse to get your hand in there with the driver and snug that lower one down. Next, we installed the horizontals. They each have their own carbon tube spar. You want to put those carbon tubes into place. The fuselage has a locking tab, and each horizontal half has a recess for that tab. You want to make your electronic connection. There's a space in the fuse for you to stuff the wire as you bring those into place. Push them in until they seat all the way, and the tab goes into the recess. Installing the vertical is similar. It too has its own carbon tube. You want to slide that into place. There's a locking tab on the fuse and a recess for that tab in the vertical itself. There's also a tab on the rudder that slides into a hole in the servo arm of the rudder servo, which is mounted in the fuselage. You want to slide that into place. It's going to slide in diagonally. You want to make sure that you're mindful to get that tab on the rudder in the hole of the servo arm. Slide it all the way in until the tab locks into the recess. Worth noting, you're going to see a bit of shoulder left, but you'll notice that the decals match up perfectly. That's actually scale on an A320. Next, we installed our nacelles onto our wings. There's a single electronic connection, and that connector only plugs in one way, so you can't get that wrong. Once you plug that in, there's a recess inside the nacelle pylon for you to tuck those wires. You'll use 4 3x10mm screws on the underside straight through the pylon mount itself, and you'll use a single 3x20mm screw that will come down into the top of the nacelle through the leading edge of the wing. That angle at that mount is how you tell the right nacelle from the left one. To install the wings, put your carbon wing tube in place. There are automatic electronic connections on the fuse and the wings, and worth noting, you can do this with the gear in the retracted position. Slide the wing into place, and there are 2 thumb screws on either side that you can snug down with that 2.5mm driver. The sharklets just simply press into tabs and slide straight back and lock into place. There are 3 antennas. If you feel the need to take those off to store it, you can, and there's a storage spot that they snap into inside the battery bay. They just snap into place on the front and on the back. And there you go. Very simple assembly, especially given the size of this airplane and the complexity of it. They really make things easy for you. All of the push rods, by the way, are already pre-installed as well, so you don't even have to worry about that. Now, a couple things. The red thumb screws that you use to attach the 2 fuselage halves and to tighten the wings down, you can use your hands to tighten those, but it's a good idea to make sure they're properly snug with a 2.5 millimeter driver or Allen wrench, given the importance of the components that they're holding together. The other thing is, the first time that you slide the wings into those pockets, it's a tight fit. It's very snug. You're going to have to do some wiggling and some finagling, holding the fuse with one hand and the wing with the other to get those in. I'm told by the guys that test these at Horizon that after several reps, that loosens up and getting the wings into the pocket is much easier, but just know it's going to be pretty snug at first, so use a bit of patience when you're doing that. E-Flite's A320neo has a 59.9-inch wingspan. It's 62.6 inches long. Our example weighs 8 pounds, 2.5 ounces, ready to fly with a recommended 5,000 milliamp 6-cell pack. It has an Avian 40-amp dual smart light brushless ESC and two 2840 1900 kV 14-pole motors. It has an array of different 13-gram digital metal gear servos and is intended for use with 6-cell 3200 to 7000 milliamp packs. So clearly this is not a park flyer. This is what we would classify as a sanctioned flying field airplane. That doesn't mean it would be impossible to fly at a really big park or a really big schoolyard. But if you're going to do that with an airplane that weighs what this does, it goes as fast as it does, you want to make sure you're aware of the laws governing flying models where you live, and I would strongly suggest taking a spotter with you so that you can be aware of people and property around you, because if you hit something with this, it is going to leave a dent. This is a 6-channel airplane out of the box. You have elevator, rudder with a steerable nose wheel, ailerons, flaps, retractable gear, and of course, throttle control. This one is a bind and fly. It has a Spectrum AR637TA receiver that has AS3X Plus stabilization and optional safe select, and is Spectrum DSM2 and DSMX protocol compatible. If you have a Spectrum Airwear capable transmitter, you'll get some smart telemetry that you see listed here. You can also program and activate a couple of virtual functions. You can go into the Avian programming, utilizing your transmitter, and program thrust reverse and assign that to a switch. You can also activate safe select and put that on a switch with AS3X Plus. You can get this model a few different ways. This paint scheme is the officially licensed scale Airbus A320neo paint scheme, and the white you see is paint, not bare foam, so it's very well done. Comes with a decal set that has some extra nomenclature as well as some Pratt & Whitney Pure Power decals for the nacelles if you'd like to add those. And that brings to mind what NEO stands for those of you that don't know. It stands for New Engine Option. When Airbus came out with the NEO, they offered some different engine options, including the Pratt & Whitney, that were more fuel efficient and more powerful. They changed the size of the seats in the cabin to make them more comfortable. They added the sharklets on the ends of the wing tips to increase fuel efficiency even more. This is the best-selling airliner in the world for a reason. It's quiet, it's efficient, it's reliable, and it's safe. You can get this paint scheme in the bind and fly that you see here, as well as a plug and play where you choose the radio protocol and install your receiver of choice yourself. The third option is a bind and fly basic white, where essentially you get a bind and fly, the fuselage, the wings, the nacelles, the tail, they're all painted minus the dark blue stripe. It comes with the NEO decals. You can use those. Comes with window and windscreen decals. You can use those any way you want, or you can go to Cali Graphics. Horizon sent her one of these fuselages, so she has two very popular airline sets of vinyls ready to rock and roll specifically for this airplane right now, and she can custom make anything else that you might want. So if you'd like to check her out, we'll put a link in the description to Cali Graphics. The Airbus has a lot of nice scale details. The mold is very well done with panel lines in all the right places. The foam is very smooth, and since everything's fully painted, it makes it look even smoother. Has plastic bits in all the right places, the nose, on the sharklets, on the tail, and it has plastic scale bits as well, like the antennas, the vanes on the nacelles, the leading edges of the nacelles, the flaps, split apart, the gear, Looks the part. You have CNC machined aluminum oleo struts with shock absorption. You have strut covers on the mains and nose wheel doors on the nose gear. And it's got a full set of scale LEDs that are day bright. It even has 3 landing LEDs that deploy and come on when you extend the gear. And they didn't stop there. They took another page out of Airbus's book and made the power system on the model both powerful and efficient. We flew this airplane with a 5000 6L, and we got 8 minutes flying it more like a sport jet than an airliner. When we took that same 5000 and just shot scale touch and goes and only used the power necessary for that, we got 15 minutes. That's pretty amazing for any EDF, especially an airliner, so you can expect class-leading flight times with this one. When it comes to hardware, you've got ball links on the control horn end and Z-bends on the servo arm end. The hinges for the flaps are plastic slotted flap style hinges. Hinges on the ailerons, elevator, and rudder are foam hinges, and they are proportional. It has bigger servos given the size of the airplane, and hence thicker foam hinges, also given the size of the airplane. And considering the amount of deflection that is designed in and what the airplane is intended for, I think it would be fine with the foam hinges on this one. It is a convenient top loader with a cavernous hatch. Plenty of room in there for the largest size batteries. This is a 6000 you see in this picture. There's plenty of room in there to do the things you need to do. It is lined with plastic on both the hatch and the fuse so that you don't burr up your finish. Perhaps, well, not perhaps, definitely the biggest feature of this airplane is convenience. We told you right at the beginning they wanted to make a large-scale airliner that flew really good. As good, if not better in some circumstances, than its biggest competition, but that was easier to deal with on a day-to-day basis, hence this specific size. It is pretty much a perfect size. If I take the sharklets off, I can get this airplane assembled in my Explorer. That's not a tiny vehicle, but it's also not a huge SUV either, so I was pretty impressed by that. But if you have something small, you can take the wings off, and it happens very fast. Plenty of room to work in here, 2 screws, and off they come, no wires to deal with. Same thing if you're in something really small and you have to take the fuse into 2 pieces. That happens just as fast. So that's very convenient. And one last really convenient feature is the smart transmitter file, which sets up your transmitter for you if you have the right transmitter and you buy the bind and fly. We'll touch more on that in the setup chapter coming up next. When it comes to setup, the manual does a great job of taking you through the steps of programming your transmitter specifically for the Airbus. There are instructions for DX, NX, and IX transmitters within, and you have other things like CG and stuff like that. When you go to buying the airplane, if you have an eligible transmitter, those are listed right here. You can take advantage of the smart transmitter file and upload that directly into your transmitter and have a full transmitter setup ready to rock and roll. It even programs voice prompts.
Takeoff flaps, landing flaps, normal mode.
One of the nice things about this setup, speaking of the flaps, is that the flaps are on flight modes, and that's obviously pre-programmed in that smart transmitter file. It enables you to fully trim the airplane on every axis at each degree of flap. And with landing flaps on this one, I needed to retrim the airplane a good little bit, so it was great to have that so that we can make the airplane fly perfectly in every position: takeoff flaps, landing flaps, and flaps up. And of course, if you take advantage of that smart transmitter file, you're not stuck with it. You can go in the transmitter and make any changes that you like to anything, including activating the advanced forward programming menu and make changes in forward programming to AS3X Plus if you feel the need to. We made some changes to the setup to suit our preferences. Nothing wrong with the smart transmitter setup, but for our style of flying and what we want the airplane to look like going through the air, we just made a few changes. We'll reflect that in our full setup page coming up at the end of this chapter so you can see what we did. Now, flying this airplane, we flew it on a 6S 5000, 6000, and 7000, and that's where we ran into a little bit of a snag. The straps that go around the batteries would only fit around our 5000s. They weren't long enough to get around the 6000s and the 7000s. And, you know, full disclosure, any airplane should have straps long enough to fit all the packs that are recommended for it, and that is what was specified with this airplane, to be fair to Horizon Hobby. But there was a mistake made somewhere along the line, and they didn't end up with the longer straps. So later production runs of these airplanes will have the proper straps in them, but for now, you can get some of this stuff here. You can get it on Amazon. You can get it at department stores, hardware stores. It is just Velcro strapping, and you can make your own straps, or you can cut a small piece. We cut about a 3¼ inch piece and just added that to the existing straps. Really simple. We'll show you right here. As you can see, this is one of our 6000s. There's our small 3¼ inch piece. We just add it to the existing strap, loop it through, and strap it right down. Easy peasy. We'll put a link in the description where you can get a hold of some of this on Amazon. Our full setup page is next. You can pause that and take a look at it. It reflects our entire personal preference setup for this airplane. Be sure and try the smart transmitter file setup out first. It's going to be fine for most people, I think, but you can adjust it any way you like. After that, we'll get straight to the demo flying, and then after that, we'll meet you back here. We'll give you our final thoughts on the A320neo. When we started this late afternoon flying session, it was really windy. Thankfully, by the golden hour, it had calmed down quite a bit. We still had a little bit of a crosswind, but not too bad. There is a quick connect that makes adjusting the alignment of the nose wheel very easy. It's worth going to the trouble to be really anal about that and get it as close as you possibly can. That makes those takeoff rolls and landing rollouts much easier to keep straight. On that takeoff, we throttled up slowly and reached about 65% power for climb out. We're setting up here for presentation pass. This is going to be at about 50% throttle. And this will be a full throttle low pass with a half Cuban. I know the scale purists are having a heart attack right now, but think of it like this, and this is a bunch of ifs, but if they had ever put Bob Hoover in the cockpit of one of these, and if you could turn off all the maneuvering limitations, this is pretty much what he'd have done, and it's cool that the model can do it. That is 2 full deflection aileron rolls, and for an airliner, that's pretty crisp and fast. The shaking on the screen you just saw is a bug all in Heidi's face. She is a trooper. Couldn't do this without her, and she kept it in frame. That was a full flap slowish pass. It will get much slower than that. You'll see that in the stall tests. That's about as cute as I was willing to get with something this important that low to the ground before we had our video made with it. It actually flew inverted quite well and didn't require much down elevator to maintain it. That was not my best landing. We can definitely do better. We're going to turn around and taxi back for a quick takeoff. This is going to be full throttle, not going to hit the elevator. Now right there I limited the amount that the nose could come up with elevator so that it didn't rotate off the ground too fast, but because of the thrust line, it will lift the front wheel off the ground if you advance the throttle too fast. too bad for a little bit of crosswind. I don't think our passengers would have been upset about that one. Nice looking airliner. The lines really present well. You'll see what I mean about how slow she can get. This is going to be a clean stall. Nose just keeps coming up, keeps getting slow, then kind of mushes forward and ever so slightly drops that left wing. Very easy to recover from. We're going to drop the gear and the flaps and do it again completely dirty. And here you'll see she gets even slower, but she will drop that left wing more abruptly, but not too abrupt, and it recovers instantly. So those of you that follow the channel know I've always got Bob Hoover in mind, so here are my first attempts at a one-wheeler. Takes a lot more aileron to lift one wing than I thought it would. It's much harder to do these with a tricycle gear airplane. You have to maintain the angle of attack without allowing it to fly and keep it on one wheel. There we go. Well, there you have it. The best way I can describe what flying this airplane is it's like flying a bit of a docile sport jet. It's actually very easy to fly and remarkably capable for what it is. It really surprised me how aerobatic this airplane is. Not everybody's going to want to do that with an airliner, but if you want to, this thing's got the chops for it. Very impressed with that. Now, I will say one thing. If you're going to use the larger size packs, if you want to do those nice wheelie takeoffs and landings like you see airliners doing on YouTube, you definitely want to put those larger packs further back, as far back as you can get them. It can do it with them farther forward. It's just harder to do. It takes a little bit more skill to do it. When you put them further back, the airplane's still well within the balance range, but it makes doing stuff like that easy. You can put the 5000 pretty much anywhere and it'll do it with that. But middle of the tray for us was where we liked it with the 5000. Now, when it comes to skill level, Horizon says this is a skill level 2, some experience required. We completely agree. If you've flown full house warbirds and things like that, and for some reason have never tried out an EDF, you can absolutely buy this airplane as your first EDF and you will be successful with it. If you are coming off of a trainer and you're bent on your second airplane ever being an EDF, it does not need to be this one. It needs to be a full house sport jet like a Viper or maybe the Habu XS before you spend the money on something like this and tackle EDFs with this. Now, when it comes to price point, interesting times that we're in, I've been given a range, and the plug and play, if they hit that range, and I think they will, is going to be very competitive with the closest competition, maybe even a little bit less. The bind and fly obviously is going to be more, but you still don't pay as much extra for the bind and fly as you would for the receiver that's in it if you just bought the receiver by itself. And if you get the bind and fly, it has technology like the smart transmitter file, which just makes an amazingly convenient airplane even more convenient. what this airplane represents and what it took to get it here, it's pretty interesting. I think the price range I've been given, I think it's a great deal. 4 years in the making, 2 different factories. First one decided a little bit more complicated. They didn't want to finish it. Over 600 parts. That's a record for a foam airplane for Horizon Hobby. The second factory got this thing done. Tooling the mold for this, it's the most expensive mold Horizon's ever had to pay for. It was a bit complicated, and it really took some doing. Not to mention the 30% tariff and the fee to Airbus, because they didn't want to name this thing something goofy. They wanted to call it an A320neo. So they paid Airbus for official licensing, and here we are. Considering all that, I think the price point is jam up and jelly tight. Now, the reason they announced this airplane as early as they did, because this is several weeks away from being shippable. I think they're trying to coordinate something with Airbus at Oshkosh, and that is the reason that it's announced fairly early. We are going to have some more content closer to time for these airplanes to ship, and that is going to be a comprehensive comparison to the closest competition. My buddy Dustin owns that airliner. He and I are going to fly both, go point by point, and tell you how this stacks up to the competition. And I can tell you, having flown both, at least right now, I think what this airplane represents is the new benchmark for a foam airliner. It is the perfect size. I said that before. I really believe that. It is big enough to fly amazing, but small enough not to be a pain in the neck to get to the field and keep in your hangar and get together. Once you get it to the field, if you got a big enough car, you may not even have to take it apart. And I think that is amazing. So if you decide that you'd like to add one of these to your hangar, you can pre-order them right now. I have a suggestion for those of you that want one of the base white ones. If you want one of those, go ahead and get it. When you go through the links, that supports our channel. When you do that, Heidi and I appreciate it. Thank you very much. That's it for us. Take care of yourselves. Happy flying. We'll see you next week with something cool with wings, and in a few weeks with a comparison to see how this thing stacks up.